Kevin.
Well, the heat continues out in Indiana this morning, and Governor Mike Pence not backing down to pressure, saying that the new from the religious freedom law is not about discrimination. He says he's standing up for religious rights. He's going to be on our show in a little bit. But he also penned a piece in the Wall Street Journal, an opinion piece, and he says this: I want to make clear to Hoosiers and every American that despite what critics and many in the national media have asserted, the law is not a license to discriminate either in Indiana or elsewhere. But that hasn't stopped businesses from saying they're going to pull out of Indiana, and other states saying we don't want anyone traveling to Indiana from our state.
Yeah, Connecticut actually saying that they're going to boycott state-sponsored travel there, even though they have a law that's quite similar and reflective of the 1993 law signed by Bill Clinton. He also mentioned this, which I thought was interesting. And by the way, we're going to actually talk to the governor here, right on Fox and Friends, in an exclusive just after 8 a.m. and hear what he has to say. You mentioned this earlier, Clayton, that he said, look, if I were in a restaurant and someone said that they weren't going to serve a couple because they were gay, I'd walk out. Right. He also said that I try to abide by the law of the Bible, saying do unto others as you would have them do unto you, really explaining there. But it hasn't stopped so many people from coming out and slamming the state and slamming the governor, calling them bigots.
Exactly. The political left is in a frenzy over this right now, but they're missing the point. This is not a bill that it discriminates against gays or anybody. It's all about religious freedom. And you were talking about companies that have come out. Apparently, Angie's List says we're not going to expand our headquarters in Indianapolis.
Eli Lilly, one of the biggest employers in Indiana.
Apple, Tim Cook, the guy who runs that, came out and said that this law is bad for gays. But then there was an item I just saw online that said, okay, they can say that, and yet Apple still sells iPhones in countries where they execute people for being homosexual. This law can be used to defend oneself. And you can say, look, I am a Muslim. Yes. I'm serving in the military. I want to grow a beard. And then they can say, well, and there's this law on the books, so, will you hear my case? That's the way it's supposed to be used. Whereas it can't be used by somebody who says, okay, we're a same-sex couple, we're going to a baker, we're asking them to bake the cake, and then the baker can't use this law to say, well, there's that law on the book that says I don't have to make you one because it's against my law. It's against what I believe in. It has never been used to the best of the knowledge of the stuff we've read in Indianapolis, and Indiana, the state itself, but nonetheless, the political left is in hysterics saying it's anti-gay. It is not anti-gay. It is about religious freedom, clearly.
They could easily separate it and just put something in the books to protect discrimination based on sexual orientation.
They don't have that law.
Maybe we'll ask the governor.
That's what Charles Krauthammer said. He said there's a simple way to answer this. Simply pass an anti-discrimination law that would cover it, and then you'd be off the hook for this.
We'll be talking to the governor about it today, just after 8 a.m.
Because the lawmakers out in Indiana said they're going to do some tweaking on the law to make it better, to quell the problems that have flared up on the political left. So maybe that's what they're going to do. We will keep you posted.
Yeah.
Well, you heard the liberal bullies slamming Indiana's religious freedom law. Up next, Indiana's Governor Mike Pence fires back. It's a Fox and Friends exclusive you don't want to miss.
That's right. Here to respond to the critics in a Fox and Friends exclusive interview is Governor Mike Pence. Governor, we thank you for being with us today. Certainly in the bullseye right now of a storm of attack, calling this law discriminatory. Is it?
It's not. I signed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act last week because I support religious liberty. This is a law that mirrors what President Clinton signed into law in 1993 and is the law either by statute or court decisions in some 30 states around America. And really, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act is simply a framework for courts to balance the various interests of citizens in a way that respects our nation's strong and long-standing commitment to the importance of religious liberty.
And there's some Republicans in the legislature there in Indiana, and you have also said that if we need to tweak this law or clarify this law, that you would do so. How specifically would you clarify and adjust the law?
Well, let me say first and foremost that, I stand by this law. But I understand that the way that some on the left and frankly some in the national media have mischaracterized this law over the last week might make it necessary for us to clarify the law through legislation. And we were working through the day and late into the night last night with legislative leaders to consider ways to do that. Because, look, there is no license to discriminate in this law. For my part, I abhor discrimination, like every other Hoosier. I don't think anyone should ever be mistreated because of who they are or who they love. And the intention of this law was really to give our courts in Indiana the same framework that we have in all 50 states in our federal courts and in some 30 other states,
sure,
to be able to review cases where religious liberty is infringed upon. But there is no license to discriminate, and there's never any intention in this law,
sure,
to give businesses permission to deny services to individuals, Governor, on the basis of who they care about.
Governor, would you take it one step further and support a law that would make it illegal to discriminate based on someone's sexual orientation?
Well, let me say that's not been my position. It's not been the position of the state of Indiana. But if the legislature brought that up, they can certainly have that debate. But let me say this issue today is, for me, first about religious liberty. But it's also about really clarifying what we've done here in the state of Indiana, what this law means in states across the country, and to make sure that people know Indiana's open for business. I mean, you all have been to the Hoosier State.
Yep.
You know there are no kinder, more hospitable people in America than here in Indiana. And if we have to make adjustments in this law to make it clear that simply this law was never intended, as some have mischaracterized it, to create the impression that businesses have the right to turn away customers on the basis of sexual orientation or any other reason, we're going to fix that.
Sure. Governor, there have been some people, I know you've been watching TV. There's been a firestorm directed at the Hoosier State. We just ran a soundbite from Al Sharpton that suggested the law, in addition to be discriminating against gays, is racist as well. What do you say to your critics who are interpreting your good intentions this way?
Well, I would first remind them that President Bill Clinton signed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act into law in 1993. In fact, as a state senator, Barack Obama voted for Illinois' Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And this is law that has worked in a very effective way, frankly, to promote tolerance around the country in cases where religious liberty is involved. And
right.
With regard to that claim, let me say 5 years ago, my wife, my 3 children, and I walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis when I co-chaired the pilgrimage to mark the 45th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. I abhor discrimination. I can tell you from my heart, if I was in a restaurant and saw a business owner deny services to someone because they were gay, I wouldn't eat there anymore. And frankly, that's how most Hoosiers are. And I just, it's important to me in this process, and we'll do it through legislation, that people know that Indiana is standing here for religious liberty. But there was never any intention in this law to create a license to discriminate, and we'll clarify that in the days ahead, and we'll fix this and move forward.
All right. I think that's exactly what a lot of people wanted to hear. Governor Mike Pence from the great state of Indiana. Sir, thank you very much for joining us with this Fox and Friends exclusive.
We so appreciate it, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.